Hey guys, tonight we're diving into something a little heavier than the usual bedtime chatter. Though don't worry, I'll keep the edges soft, like a blanket you forgot you still owned. Picture the last echoes of a battlefield, the ground still warm with smoke and ash, and then silence. That's where you find yourself, standing in the middle of a world that has moved on without asking your permission. And let's be real, you probably wouldn't survive 5 minutes in this kind of medieval mess. No Wi-Fi, no air conditioning, no oat milk lattes. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, I'd love to know, where are you listening from? And what time is it in your corner of the world right now? Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Smoke still coils around your boots, the smell of ash tangled with the iron tang of blood. The field before you, once thundering with hooves and clashing steel, is now scattered with broken spears and dented helmets. Every gust of wind flips a shattered shield, the clatter ringing out like some absent-minded librarian shelving books too late at night. Strange, isn't it, that the chaos of war can end in silence so absolute, you could almost hear your own doubts. You limp forward, the mud clinging to your greaves like an overeager toddler, and realize it's the quiet itself that makes your heart pound harder. For a moment you swear you still hear the drumbeat of battle, but it turns out to be just your stomach, protesting the fact you skipped lunch. Historians still argue about whether today's clash really marked the end of a war, or simply another intermission in a much longer struggle. But standing here, caked in soot, it feels very much like a final curtain call. A crow swoops down, pecking at a torn leather glove before startling at your movement and vanishing into the sky. The scene could almost be mistaken for some post-apocalyptic movie, except instead of neon ruins and angry robots, it's just earth painted red and armor left behind. Funny, isn't it? Men fought and died for this patch of land as if it were prime real estate in downtown Manhattan. You drop onto a jagged rock, slide your helmet free, and let the breeze comb through sweat-stiffened hair. Your neck aches like you've just slept wrong on a budget airline seat. But in that pain, there's also something rare. Absolute quiet. No captains shouting, no horses screaming, no friends calling out your name. Just you and the steady, almost ridiculous rhythm of your own heartbeat. You remember the morning, when banners cracked in the wind like sails, and soldiers swore to stand unbroken. People say knights don't fear death, but you know better. Fear was there, in whispered prayers, in charms tied to belts, even in one man's insistence that his unwashed socks would somehow ward off a blade. Those absurd details linger in your mind, bittersweet, like a joke you can't quite laugh at. When you rise again, your tattered cloak drags behind you, brushing mud like a weary broom. A few riderless horses graze nervously at the edge of the field, their saddles swaying empty. And in that moment you realize, whatever war you just survived, your true journey hasn't even started yet. The banner lies crumpled in the mud, a once proud square of cloth now torn, streaked with soot and stiff with dried blood. You bend down, fingers brushing across the faded emblem stitched by hands that probably never set foot on a battlefield. For years, it led you forward, through storms, across rivers, into the teeth of steel. And now it's just fabric, fluttering weakly like a flag outside a rundown diner. You pick it up anyway, shaking off the dirt, though it feels almost silly to cradle a rag when your arm still trembles from the weight of battle. The silence is heavy, but not empty. It has texture, broken lances jutting up like crooked gravestones, a fallen horn half buried in mud, a boot with no foot inside. You carry the banner on your shoulder as though it were still a beacon. Strange thing about symbols, they hold even when men do not. Historians still debate whether knights carried banners more for morale or simply for keeping order in the chaos. Either way, it worked, you followed it, and others followed you. Now, with no army left, it feels like a lighthouse switched on in a city with no sea. You stumble over a body, catch yourself, then glance down. It's a boy, barely shaving age, jaw slack, eyes wide. The banner dips as if bowing toward him, and for a second you want to apologize, though to whom exactly you're not sure. You joke to yourself that medieval recruitment standards must have been about as rigorous as signing up for a free streaming trial. Anyone could get in. A gust of wind snaps the cloth in your hand, startling you like a shout in a dark hallway. You clutch it tighter. Somewhere deep inside, you recognize the irony. You've survived, but you're the one carrying the funeral colors now. Every step forward feels ceremonial, like you're leading a parade where no one is left to march. As you walk, memories spark like stubborn embers. The banner's colors once gleamed so bright you could see them even through dust storms. Nobles rode under it, peasants cheered for it, monks blessed it. You think of the seamstress, nameless now, who spent nights by candlelight stitching thread that has outlived entire battalions. Would she laugh to see her handiwork trailing through mud? Or would she cry? Probably both. A raven lands on the shaft, bold as a critic, cocking its head at you. You swat at it lazily, and it hops away with an indignant croak. Honestly, it's the most judgmental audience you've had in weeks. The banner sways in your grasp, heavier than it should be, as though soaked not just with rain but with the weight of memory. You pause at the edge of the field, where the grass is still green and untouched. The banner drapes down, brushing against blades of grass like it's bowing out of the fight. For the first time, you think about where you'll take it. Not back to a king, because who knows if the throne even holds, but perhaps home, to hang in some quiet hall, to remind anyone who looks at it of both triumph and ruin. And in the corner of your mind, you hear the whisper. Maybe you're carrying it not for the kingdom, but for yourself. Because if you let it go, if you dropped it in the mud where it belongs, then what proof would there be that you were ever here at all? So you keep walking, the banner trailing behind, a strip of history refusing to lie down. The sword feels heavier now than it ever did in the chaos of battle. You draw it slowly from its scabbard, the metal rasping like an old man clearing his throat. The blade catches the dim light, and you can't help but notice how dulled the edge has become, nicks and chips lining its surface like scars. Once, this weapon was polished to a shine, a gleaming promise of victory. Now, it looks like the kind of secondhand kitchen knife you'd find in a thrift store bin, more dangerous to the wielder than to the enemy. You run your thumb lightly along the flat of the blade, careful not to catch one of the jagged teeth. Even so, the steel feels cold, almost resentful. You can't help but think, this thing has killed, and yet it has survived more than many who wielded it. Funny how tools outlive their masters. Some historians like to argue that knights rarely kept their swords long. They broke, they were gifted, they were stolen. But you know this one, your companion through fire and mud, has been with you long enough to feel like part of your arm. You balance it in your palm, remembering the first time you held it. Back then, it was impossibly heavy, so much so that your wrist ached after only a few swings. A veteran had laughed at you, saying, "Don't worry, boy, the sword will teach you how to hold it." And he was right. Over the years, you learned how to make it dance, to feel the shift of weight, to strike without hesitation. But looking at it now, bent slightly near the hilt, it's less a dancer and more a limping old soldier. You joke to yourself that if swords could talk, yours would probably sigh and complain about retirement plans. Maybe ask for a pension, or at least a warm rack in some museum where tourists could gawk at it. Instead, it gets you muddy boots, sore muscles, and no promise of rest. You lift it toward the horizon, just to see the way the setting sun glints against the metal. It doesn't gleam so much as smolder, red light trapped in each imperfection. You imagine the blade as a mirror, reflecting not glory but all the faces it's seen, foes and friends alike. The thought chills you. For a moment you wonder whether the sword remembers better than you do. Nearby, a helmet rests on the ground, split wide open as if a giant had cracked a walnut. You push it gently aside with the tip of your blade, careful not to damage either. That's the irony. You're still trying to protect relics of war from more harm, even as the relic you carry is on its last legs. You think about how knights were often buried with their swords, steel laid across their chests like a silent companion into eternity. Will this one lie with you someday? Or will you abandon it along the road, trading it for bread or shelter when hunger presses too hard? The idea stings, but then again, survival rarely cares about sentiment. A sudden breeze whistles through the holes in the blade's edge, and you laugh softly, tiredly. It sounds like the sword itself is wheezing. The absurdity of it makes you smile for the first time since dawn. Because really, what is a knight without his sword? Maybe just a man who walks home slower, with lighter baggage and one fewer story to tell. You sheath it again, the weight returning to your side. It may be rusted, it may be weary, but it's still yours. And in that quiet, you feel a strange comfort. If you're falling apart, at least you're not doing it alone. The memory comes to you unbidden, your oath. You don't even notice at first. It slips in like the smell of bread drifting from a bakery you thought had closed years ago. You hear your own younger voice, shaky but determined, kneeling in that cold stone hall, swearing loyalty to God, to your king, to justice. The words were grand, too grand for your mouth back then. They felt like armor heavier than any plate you could wear. You pause in the fading light, your rusted sword at your hip, the tattered banner slung over your shoulder, and you murmur the words again under your breath. They don't quite fit anymore, like a suit you grew out of but refused to throw away. The promise was simple: defend the weak, uphold the law, serve without question. And yet, here you are, alone, limping through a field of the fallen, wondering what any of that meant when kingdoms crumble and kings forget your name. Historians still argue whether knights truly lived by their oaths or whether the whole thing was mostly for show, like a medieval PR campaign. But you remember how your chest swelled when you first swore it. That pride felt real. It was the kind of moment you'd wish could be broadcast live, maybe even clipped into a TikTok with dramatic background music. Except, of course, there was no audience but stone walls, solemn priests, and the sound of your own heart hammering like a drum. You chuckle softly, realizing how much younger you were then, how convinced you'd be remembered in songs, your name embroidered into banners. Instead, you're trudging back from a war no one will write a ballad about, carrying scars like unwanted tattoos. That's the thing about oaths. They stay shiny in the memory even when reality tarnishes everything else. The evening breeze carries the scent of damp earth and iron, and you think about the weight of promises. Every vow feels heavier than steel. You swore to defend your brothers in arms, and most of them are gone. You swore to protect the innocent, and you can't even say who counts as innocent anymore. You swore to serve your king, but is the crown still steady on his head? Or has the throne shifted beneath him like a chair with one broken leg? You stop by a shattered wagon, its wheels half sunk in the mud, and sit. Your knees ache, your breath fogs in the cooling air. You picture the ceremony when you became a knight. The kneeling, the blessing, the tap of the sword on your shoulders. Back then, the tap felt like lightning surging through your bones. Now it feels more like a joke, as though someone had knighted you not for honor but for endurance. Endurance of hunger, of wounds, of silence. Still, the words won't leave you. I swear to guard. You whisper it, almost as a lullaby. The words wobble like a cart on a rocky road, yet they're still intact. You realize that despite everything, the oath still matters to you, not because the kingdom deserves it, but because you do. If you let go of those words, then what's left of you beyond the mud, the aches, the fading memories? You rise slowly, leaning on your sword as if it were a crutch, the banner trailing. The oath lingers in your chest like a stubborn ember, refusing to go out. And as you take another step forward, you think, maybe it's not about who you swore it to. Maybe it's about who you still want to be, even when no one is watching. The camp is empty now, a ghost town stitched together from scraps of canvas and broken wagons. You step between tents flapping weakly in the breeze, their poles leaning like drunks who can't find their way home. The air carries the faint smell of smoke and bread. Though the bread is long gone, the oven's overturned, the embers cold. You half expect to hear laughter or arguments, the hum of soldiers killing time before killing each other. Instead, there's only the creak of rope and the occasional crow scavenging through abandoned supplies. You wander past a row of fire pits, each one ringed with stones blackened by weeks of use. Most are choked with ash now, but a few still cradle faint coils of smoke, thin as a sigh. You crouch beside one and poke at the remains with your gauntlet. The wood collapses instantly, nothing left but dust. It feels wrong, somehow, that the last fires of this army died quietly, without ceremony, like the final lamp left on in an office nobody bothered to lock. A shattered cup lies half-buried nearby, its wine long soaked into the earth. You pick it up, turn it over in your hand, and grin despite yourself. It still smells faintly sour, like the cheap stuff taverns water down but swear is vintage. You imagine some soldier cursing as he dropped it in a rush, only to never come back. Historians still debate whether soldiers in medieval armies had much leisure in camp or if the reality was endless drills. From the look of this camp, it was both. Cards tossed aside, dice half buried in the dirt, and one lute with a snapped string abandoned like an unwelcome memory. You find a bench, one of those makeshift things nailed together in a hurry, and sit down. It groans beneath your weight but holds. For a moment you just breathe, surrounded by the detritus of lives once vibrant. A tunic draped across a pole flaps like a flag. It seems patched and patched again. Someone lived here, slept here, dreamed of surviving the battle, maybe of returning home. Dreams, like tents, fold too easily. You let your eyes wander, cataloging the traces of humanity left behind. A child's wooden toy carved crudely into the shape of a horse. Did some soldier carry it as a charm? Or was there truly a child here once? A rosary lies tangled in the dirt, beads dull with grime but still intact. You pick it up, let it run through your fingers, and think about prayers whispered in this place. Prayers that went unanswered, or maybe answered in ways no one liked. For a moment, the camp feels alive again. You almost hear the chatter, the scrape of bowls, the rhythmic sound of a blacksmith at the forge. You can smell meat roasting, though your stomach knows it's a lie. The echo is cruel in its vividness, like replaying a favorite song in your head only to realize you don't remember the last verse. You stand, shake the dust from your cloak, and walk on. The camp thins into scattered debris until there's nothing left but grass reclaiming the ground. You glance back once, just once, at the rows of sagging tents and blackened fire pits. A city of warriors reduced to silence in less than a day. You mutter to yourself, funny thing about camps, they disappear faster than the memories they hold. And with that, you turn your face toward the road, where the setting sun paints everything in a bruised gold. Whatever's ahead, it won't be as quiet as this. At least, that's what you tell yourself as your boots carry you onward. The silence begins to shift. It's not the emptiness of the camp anymore, but something heavier, closer, like the breath of unseen companions. You stop, tilting your head. At first you think it's just the wind tugging through the broken branches overhead. But then you hear it, a whisper, soft, almost teasing, like someone leaning over your shoulder to share a secret they shouldn't. You turn, of course, because that's what anyone would do when ghosts decide to gossip. There's no one there, just the pale glow of moonlight on armor left scattered, helmets staring blankly with hollow eyes. Still, the sound lingers, weaving through the field like smoke, threads of voices too faint to make out but too real to ignore. You take another step and the whispers swell. For a second you imagine your comrades are right beside you again. Roderick with his crooked grin, Tomas humming tunelessly under his breath, even the squire who always swore he'd quit after just one more campaign. Their voices aren't sharp or sorrowful. They're strangely calm, as though death had finally taught them patience. Historians still argue about how soldiers process grief in times like these, whether they believed in spirits or simply trained themselves to ignore the dead. But standing here, you realize it doesn't matter what the scholars write. You hear them, clear as your own thoughts, maybe clearer. You walk on, letting the sound accompany you. Every crunch of your boot seems to answer them, a rhythm of the living joining the murmur of the lost. One whisper threads itself louder than the others. A laugh. You freeze. It's familiar, achingly so. You remember it from a night long ago when wine flowed too freely and stories of impossible victories were told as if they were gospel. It echoes now, and you can't help but laugh back, half mad, half grateful. You wonder if this is what all nights eventually become. Walking between worlds, carrying banners for the living while hearing the songs of the dead. You mutter to yourself, if this is madness, at least it's good company. The joke lands softly in your chest, comforting in a way. At the edge of the clearing, you pass a line of shields propped into the dirt. Their paint is chipped, the crests fading, but they stand like silent sentinels. The whispers grow quieter as you approach, as though even ghosts bow in respect to the walls that once protected them. You brush a hand across one shield, and the chill that runs up your arm feels like a handshake. The night is deeper now, stars spilling across the sky in careless brilliance. The whispers settle, not gone but subdued, as though they've tucked themselves back into the earth. You breathe, long and steady. Maybe they're not asking for anything. Maybe they just wanted you to remember. With the banner over your shoulder and the weight of your sword at your side, you keep moving. The silence returns, but it's a different silence now. It's filled, layered, like the hush that follows applause. And you think, with a small, tired smile, perhaps the dead aren't haunting you. Perhaps they're just walking you home. The wound nags at you with every step. It isn't the glorious kind of wound ballads sing about. No heroic scar carved across your chest. No arrow lodged dramatically in your shoulder. No, yours is humbler, tucked low along your thigh where a spear glanced and tore muscle instead of bone. Each stride sends a sharp reminder, like walking with a pebble in your shoe that's learned how to stab. You press your palm against the bandage, feeling the sticky warmth beneath. It's not bleeding as badly now, but it throbs with its own pulse, as though the wound has ambitions of becoming a second heart. You mutter under your breath, joking that nights should have come with warranties. 6 months of glory, free repairs included. Instead, all you've got is a strip of cloth, some grit, and the hope that your body still remembers how to knit itself back together. The pain slows you down. Every time you stumble, you curse softly, but the curses are more weary than angry. Historians often argue about the survivability of battlefield wounds in your era. Some claim infection killed more soldiers than swords. Others insist the tough just trudged on. You'd laugh at the debate if laughing didn't jolt your leg. All you know is that the world has narrowed to 2 points. The place you came from and the place you're trying to reach, with pain filling every space between. You lean against a broken cart for a moment, catching your breath. The wood smells of pitch and mud, the wheel long snapped. You remember nights when this wound would have meant stopping entirely, letting someone else carry you, or waiting for the mercy of a surgeon with a knife sharper than his wit. But there's no one now, just you. And oddly, that's what keeps you going. The thought that if you fall, no one will bother picking you up. You limp forward again, each step a small negotiation between determination and agony. The banner drags lower, brushing the ground, and the sword at your side clinks out a rhythm that sounds suspiciously like mockery. You grin despite yourself. Pain, at least, is honest. It doesn't flatter, it doesn't lie. It tells you exactly how alive you still are. At one point you nearly collapse, your knee buckling, but you catch yourself against a tree. Bark digs into your palm, grounding you. You whisper through clenched teeth, "Not yet." You don't even know who you're saying it to, the wound, the earth, the ghosts you left behind, but the words steady you. You push on, limping, dragging, swearing softly, but moving nonetheless. Each step hurts, but each step is also proof. The knight who can't fight can still walk. And maybe, just maybe, walking is the truest kind of victory left. Dusk gathers like a cloak over your shoulders, the sky bleeding from gold into bruised purple. You come upon a crossroads, 3 paths cutting away from each other, each marked by old wooden posts leaning like tired sentries. The signs are weathered, letters nearly erased, the kind of thing that would make even Google Maps throw up its hands and say, "Good luck, buddy." You stop in the middle, banner sagging, sword heavy at your side. The left road dips into a valley, mist already rising from its depths. The right climbs toward low hills, their edges sharp against the darkening sky. Straight ahead stretches the main road, wider, flatter, worn smooth by generations of boots and hooves. You shift your weight, your wound complaining with every movement, and realize how absurdly symbolic this feels. Like life has decided to stage direct your evening with a cliché. Choose your path, night. A breeze sweeps through, carrying the smell of wet earth and distant wood smoke. The kind that makes you wonder who else is out there, tending fires, laughing, unaware of the silence you've just left behind. Historians still debate whether medieval crossroads were seen as practical markers or mystical thresholds, places where deals with devils might be struck, or where the souls of the dead wandered. You don't need the historians, though. Standing here, you feel it in your bones. The air hums with decision. You lower yourself onto a fallen log at the edge of the junction. The bark is damp, soaking through your cloak, but you don't care. For a moment you just sit, watching shadows lengthen. The banner droops beside you, limp as if even it is tired of choosing. You think about how many times you followed orders. March here, fight there, defend this, burn that. But here now no one commands. The silence asks instead, "What do you want?" The left path whispers of secrecy, of mist curling like secrets around your ankles. The right shouts challenge, promising rough ground but clearer air. The straight road is steady, predictable, the kind that takes you home, or at least closer to it. You chuckle under your breath, wincing as the movement jars your wound. "A night at a crossroads," you mutter. How original. The joke doesn't solve the problem, but it loosens the tightness in your chest. Sometimes laughter is a compass, however crooked. In the end, you rise, brushing damp moss from your cloak, and set your foot forward. Maybe it doesn't matter which road you choose. Maybe the act of choosing is enough. The banner stirs faintly behind you, catching the wind, and you take the first limping step into the twilight. The hills rise around you like sleeping giants, their ridges catching the last of the sun's red glow. Each step feels heavier now, the wound pulsing, your breath rattling like loose armor plates. Still, you climb. The path narrows into rocky soil, sharp edges snagging your boots, and you find yourself thinking that medieval footwear really should have come with arch support. At the crest, you pause. The world unfolds beneath you, fields stitched like patchwork, forests pooled in shadows, and far on the horizon, the faint glitter of water. A river, wide and bending, reflecting the last scraps of light. For a moment, the sight steadies you. That river could be your guide, its flow leading eastward, homeward, or at least toward somewhere that smells less of blood and more of bread. As the sky deepens into indigo, you hear it, the faint ringing of metal. At first, you think it's the echo of your own armor, but no, the rhythm is too clean, too deliberate. A hammer striking an anvil carried on the wind. A blacksmith's forge hidden in these hills. Strange. Few forges stayed so far from villages. Some historians suggest these isolated smithies supplied more than farmers. They served mercenaries, rebels, even outlaw knights who needed blades no one else dared make. You wonder, as the sound repeats, what kind of stories those hammers could tell. You follow the noise, drawn like a moth to sparks. Sure enough, tucked into a hollow of rock, a glow breathes against the dark. Orange, steady, alive. You limp closer and the forge comes into view. No house, no family, just a stone hut with fire bleeding from its mouth. The hammering stops. Silence expands, thick and watchful. Traveler, a voice calls, rough, graveled like rocks grinding together. You've bled on the path. You tighten your grip on the banner, though your arms tremble. From the shadows steps a figure, shoulders broad, apron blackened, eyes catching the firelight. The smith. He looks at you as though he already knows the battles behind your eyes. There's no hostility in his stance, just that ancient craftsman's patience. Steel can break or hold. Mend too. You want it mended. His chin tilts, not at your sword, but at your chest, at the wound. You exhale a shaky laugh. Do you forge ribs? The smith doesn't smile. He turns back toward the glow of his forge and simply says, "Sit," and somehow you obey. The forge breathes like some ancient creature, every bellow stroke pulling air into its chest and exhaling sparks. You sit on a rough stone, your back screaming at the pressure, your blood seeping into dust. The blacksmith doesn't rush. He moves with the patience of someone who has seen steel snap 1,000 times and knows that mending is always slower than breaking. From a clay jug, he pours water into a wooden bowl, steam hissing as drops splash on the forge floor. Without a word, he dips a cloth, wrings it out, and presses it against your wound. The burn is instant, like every horn player in history suddenly decided to practice inside your chest cavity. But then the relief follows. Coolness, pressure, a reminder that you're still attached to yourself. He sets the cloth, then studies your sword. You carry it like a knight, he says, but not like one still sworn. You want to laugh, but coughing comes instead. Aren't you supposed to just ask my name first? The smith glances up, and there's something in his eyes, recognition, maybe, or suspicion. Names change, scars don't. He takes your blade, lays it across the anvil, and runs his thumb along the edge. It sings under his touch, a high whisper only steel makes. He shakes his head. Cracked. Too much weight, too many strikes without rest. Like the one who carries it. You can't argue with that. And as sparks fly with his hammer, you remember something. An odd historical detail you once overheard at a feast. That blacksmiths in some villages were thought to hold sacred power, almost like shamans. The fire was life. Their iron was blood. Their rhythm the heartbeat of the earth itself. People whispered that smiths could temper not only blades, but also men's destinies. No one knew if it was faith or fear, but many lords kept them close, sometimes closer than priests. So here you sit, watching, half delirious, wondering if this man is reforging more than just metal. Between the ringing blows, he finally asks, "Why carry the banner still, when the Lord who raised it is dust?" You look at the cloth in your lap, still stained, still torn. For the first time, the question feels heavier than the weapon. Why do you still carry it? Habit? Duty? Guilt? The smith doesn't press for an answer. He simply quenches the sword in water, steam rising like ghosts. Steel survives when the fire and water agree. Men. His voice trails, but the meaning doesn't. The night outside grows colder, the stars sharpening like frost. Somewhere in the dark, an owl hoots, mocking or maybe approving. The smith hands you back the blade. Its edge gleams anew, a fresh bite. Not whole, he admits, but enough for the road. His gaze narrows. The road east. You didn't tell him you were heading east. Your stomach knots, but your limbs are too weak to argue. Maybe he's guessing, or maybe he knows more than he should. Either way, dawn is coming, and you'll have to leave before the fire dies. The first light of dawn smears pale silver across the forge window, and you rise with that uneasy mix of stiffness and adrenaline that feels too familiar now. The blacksmith has already banked the fire, hammer tucked away, arms folded like he has nothing more to say. But his eyes track you, and you swear he's watching not just your body, but your choices. You sling the banner back across your shoulder, tuck the sword against your hip, and offer a nod, half thanks, half farewell. He only grunts. That's the thing about smiths. They don't spend words where iron will do. Stepping outside, the morning air bites with the sharpness of unwashed frost. You smell damp earth, wet hay, the faint sweetness of bread baked hours earlier. The village stirs in fragments, hooves clattering on cobbles, children still rubbing sleep from their eyes, smoke curling lazily from chimneys. For a heartbeat, it almost looks like peace. And you know too well how peace is always the easiest thing to burn. As you pass the well, an old woman stares at you for too long. Not the kind of glance that admires, nor the shy curiosity of children. It's a measuring gaze, as though she's matching you against a memory. You nod, hoping politeness might break the spell, but she mutters something you don't quite catch. Something about the rider who never rests. You push onward. By the time the road bends toward the hills, you hear it, the rumble of hooves behind you. Not the chaotic thunder of a warband, but a steady rhythm, deliberate, as though someone is keeping time with your stride. You resist the urge to turn immediately, forcing yourself to look casual, like someone on a morning walk rather than a night barely stitched together. When you finally glance back, you see him, a lone rider cloaked in gray, face shadowed by the hood, horse breathing plumes of mist. He keeps his distance, not closing in, not falling back. Just there. You try to outpace him, but your legs are no match for hooves. Try to stop, and so does he. The two of you dance this awkward duet for miles until, at last, you give in and wave him forward. The rider approaches slowly, and when the hood lifts, you almost laugh from sheer disbelief. He's young, too young, barely past boyhood, cheeks still round, though his eyes burn with something older. "I was told you'd come this way," he says, voice steady in that way people practice when they want to hide nerves. "They said you'd carry the banner." Your first instinct is annoyance. They said too much. He doesn't flinch. Instead, he slides off his horse and kneels in the mud, one knee sinking deep, head bowed. The whole picture looks absurd. You, ragged and limping. Him, shiny-eyed and solemn like an illustration from a prayer book. "I beg you," he says, "let me serve." You blink. That's not how this works. Squires aren't supposed to just appear on lonely roads like pop-up ads offering you more responsibility. Still, the moment carries weight, and in the stillness you recall a strange historical tidbit. In some regions, squires would seek out masters not by arrangement, but by following rumors. A man with a banner, a blade, a story, that was enough to attract the ambitious. Some succeeded. Others ended up forgotten in shallow graves, chasing legends that didn't care about their names. You study the boy. His tunic is patched, his boots caked with dirt, but the determination in his eyes doesn't wobble. "What's your name?" you ask. "Edric," he says, as though daring you to laugh. You don't. Instead, you sigh. "You understand I can't feed another mouth? I can hunt," he says quickly. "I can ride. And I know songs. Soldiers remember better when there's music." Of course he'd play that card. History is full of half-trained squires strumming lutes like bards while sharpening swords they weren't yet allowed to swing. You shake your head, half amused, half resigned. "Fine. Walk beside me. But know this, if you can't keep up, you'll be left behind." He smiles like you've just handed him a crown. And so, as the sun lifts fully over the hills, you find yourself no longer entirely alone. The road feels different, with an echo of footsteps beside yours, a younger shadow trailing your own. Still, somewhere in the back of your mind, the blacksmith's warning smolders. The road east. The road east narrows into a corridor of brambles and rock, as if nature itself has grown defensive. You trudge forward, boots finding rhythm in the crunch of gravel, while Edric, your new shadow, keeps pace, eager but cautious. He watches you closely, like every motion of your hand might be a lesson worth memorizing. Honestly, it's a bit like traveling with a puppy that has memorized the art of war. The morning grows long, and silence thickens between you two until Edric finally breaks it. "Is it true," he asks, voice low, "that you fought at the river crossing? That you held back 3 riders alone?" You chuckle, the sound rough in your throat. 3? More like 30 if you believe tavern songs. "In truth, I was trying not to drown in mud, and most of the killing was done by luck, or by horses panicking." His eyes widen, admiration unshaken. "Still, you were there. My father told me those who crossed that river never came back the same. He isn't wrong. You can still feel the weight of waterlogged armor dragging you down in dreams, a detail most songs politely skip. The road bends again, curling toward a thicket where sunlight dies in patches. You sense it before you hear it, like the way a room feels different just before someone coughs. Instinct whispers, "Not safe." Your hand brushes the sword hilt. Edric notices, straightens, tries to look brave. "What is it?" he whispers. And then you hear it properly. A too regular snap of twig, the faint scrape of metal against bark. You stop mid-stride, raising one hand in warning. The boy freezes. From the shadows, they emerge. 5 of them, ragged cloaks, weapons mismatched and cruelly efficient. Bandits, though their formation is too neat, too purposeful. Not starving peasants. Professionals at being desperate. One steps forward, grin sharp as a wolf's. "Nice banner you've got," he drawls. "Shame if someone took it." You sigh. Always the banner. Always the symbol, never the person hauling it like unpaid delivery service. "Do you practice these lines in the mirror?" you ask, tilting your head. "Because you should. You sound like a tax collector with head trauma." Edric stifles a laugh, which makes the bandit leader's grin collapse into a snarl. "Funny," he spits. "We'll see if you're laughing when you're bones." History lesson break. Ambushes on lonely roads weren't always about robbery. Sometimes they were political plays, mercenaries in disguise, eliminating enemies under the mask of common banditry. Chroniclers later would note how suspiciously convenient certain bandit attacks were. Scholars still argue whether these were orchestrated by lords or simply opportunistic crime. And as you look at these men, you feel the itch of something rehearsed. You draw your sword. Slowly, deliberately, the steel catches the weak sunlight, flashing like a last warning. If you want it, you say, "Come take it." The first rush comes fast. A blade arcs toward your ribs, but your reflexes, dulled as they are, still bite back. You parry, twist, shove the man aside, the clash ringing down the hollow road. Another lunges, only to meet the edge of your banner pole cracking into his teeth. Who knew propaganda could double as a weapon? Edric does what no sensible squire would. He throws himself at the nearest bandit with nothing but fists and fury. It's clumsy, wild, more courage than technique, but it buys you a heartbeat. The fight is ugly. No elegant duels, no chivalric speeches. Just mud, metal, and the raw thud of survival. One bandit crumples beneath your blade. Another limps back clutching a broken arm, and the rest hesitate, suddenly less eager to be martyrs. The leader glares at you, panting, weighing pride against survival. He spits into the dirt, signals retreat, and melts back into the thicket with his wounded. You stand there breathing hard, banner half torn, sword streaked. Edric, hair plastered to his forehead with sweat, looks up at you, eyes wide, half in terror, half in awe. "You," he gasps, "you fight like the stories." You wipe the blade against your cloak. Stories don't limp this much. Still, as you both catch your breath, you feel something shift. The road is no longer just stone and dirt. It has teeth now, and somewhere ahead, sharper ones are waiting. Night arrives like ink spilling slowly across the sky, the horizon bruised with fading light. You and Edric stagger toward the silhouette of a ruined watchtower, its jagged outlines stabbing at the stars. Once, this tower must have been a sentinel, warning villages of invaders or signaling fires in wartime. Now, it's little more than a husk of stone and ivy, leaning precariously like a drunk trying to remember which way home is. Inside, the air tastes of dust and old lichen. Your footsteps echo hollowly across cracked flagstones as you guide Edric deeper into the skeleton of the tower. The roof is long gone, but some walls still stand, embracing the night in broken geometry. It's not much, but it's shelter, at least enough to keep the two of you hidden from wandering eyes. Edric collapses against a fallen block of stone, chest heaving, cheeks smeared with dried blood. His, not yours, thankfully. "I didn't think I'd still be alive," he admits, voice shaky. You lower yourself onto the cold ground opposite him, stretching your tired legs. "That makes two of us." Bandits have a habit of cutting short people's travel plans. He laughs, a weak huff that turns into a cough. For a moment, silence folds over you both, broken only by the restless wind threading through gaps in the wall. Then, like any restless apprentice, Edric asks the question you've been avoiding all evening. Were they really bandits, or something else? You hesitate, eyes drawn to the blackened horizon. Hard to say. They moved with too much discipline for common thieves. Whoever sent them wanted the banner gone. Maybe wanted me gone too. A shiver runs through him, and he pulls his cloak tighter. So someone knows we're traveling east. Someone always knows, you mutter. Information spreads faster than disease. And trust me, I've seen disease. A pause. Then, to distract him from spiraling, "Do you know what this tower was?" You ask. He shakes his head. "This," you gesture around, "was once a beacon. Fires would be lit here to signal danger. Raids, invasions, the usual medieval cheer. Imagine, entire valleys waking in the night because smoke spiraled upward from this ruin." Edric tilts his head back, picturing it. So people trusted this tower to warn them. You nod. And like all warnings, it was only as reliable as the man lighting the fire. If he fell asleep, or worse, was bribed, the whole valley could burn without warning. Historical aside here. Chroniclers tell of a watchman in Gascony who supposedly accepted a bribe to delay lighting his beacon. The result was a village razed before reinforcements arrived. Scholars still debate whether this was treachery or simple incompetence, but the story lingers as a reminder. One weak link could unravel an entire chain of defense. You stretch your arms, muscles groaning like rusty hinges. So, lesson 1. Never trust just one set of eyes. Even towers fall asleep. Edric smirks, despite exhaustion. Lesson 1. How many lessons do you have? You grin faintly. Enough to fill a library that nobody reads. But since you're still breathing, we'll start with a few tonight. The fire you've managed to coax from scraps of wood crackles low, throwing shadows onto the crumbling walls. For a moment, warmth presses back against the gnawing chill, though it feels borrowed, fragile. Above, stars spill across the sky like careless sparks, and for a brief second, you remember lying beneath the same stars when you were young, before battlefields, before the crown, before the burden of banners. The same constellations that guided night centuries before you are guiding you still. Edric follows your gaze upward. Do you ever wish you'd stayed home? That you'd never picked up the sword? The question stings not because of its bluntness, but because of how rarely you've let yourself think about it. Sometimes, you admit softly, but staying home isn't always an option. Sometimes home leaves you before you can leave it. He frowns but doesn't press. Instead, he curls closer to the fire, already half asleep. Youth has that gift, burning bright, then snuffing out without warning. You remain awake longer, listening to the night. Somewhere beyond the broken tower walls, an owl hoots. Farther still, wolves trade songs across the dark. The world is alive in its own rhythm, uncaring of knights, banners, or the petty squabbles of men. Eventually, fatigue wraps its claws around you too. You lean against the cold stone, eyes heavy, and whisper half to yourself, half to the ruins. May this tower keep at least one more vigil. The stars will slowly overhead. The fire hisses and dies, and the watchtower, broken though it is, stands sentinel once more, for you, for the boy, for the fragile line between survival and memory. Dawn creeps in pale and brittle, painting the sky the color of old parchment. The fire has long since died to ash, and your breath fogs in the cold air as you and Edric pick your way down the uneven path from the watchtower. His steps are steadier now, though his shoulders still slump beneath the weight of exhaustion. The road east winds through scrub and frost-hardened fields, quiet except for crows that wheel above, their cries carrying on the wind. At first, you think nothing of it. Crows follow armies, follow death. But then the smell hits, thick, acrid, unmistakable. Smoke. You stop, hand tightening around your reforged blade. Edric notices too. His face pales. The village comes into view slowly, as if reluctant to show itself. Huts sag in blackened heaps, thatch roofs collapsed into skeletal beams. A well lies choked with ash. A cart, burned to its iron frame, tilts drunkenly in the mud. The silence is worse than screams, worse than the clash of swords. It is final, an echo of what has already been taken. Edric swallows hard. Gods! You say nothing. Words are useless here. Instead, you scan the wreckage with the practiced eyes of someone who's seen this before, too many times. The precision of it is what chills you, not the chaos of bandits. This was methodical, torches carried house to house, a pattern of destruction meant to erase rather than merely steal. Whoever did this wanted not just goods, but but silence. And then you find them. In the hollow of a doorway, 3 villagers lie together. An old man, a woman, and a boy. Their hands are clasped, even in death. The woman's arm still reaches outward, as if trying to shield the child with the last of her strength. Edric turns away, gagging. You don't stop him. Some things a man has to confront at his own pace. Why would they? He begins, but his voice cracks. You kneel, fingers brushing the earth near the bodies. Cold. No tracks nearby, not anymore. The rain last night saw to that. But the pattern of destruction speaks enough. This wasn't random, you murmur. It was a message. He looks at you sharply. For who? Maybe for us. The words hang heavy. You can feel his fear swelling like a tide. So you cut it before it drowns him. Edric, you say steady, firm. Look at me. Reluctantly, he does. His eyes are glassy, his youth cracking under the weight of ash and ruin. This, you gesture around, is what happens when fire runs wild, when men obey orders without conscience. You asked me last night if I ever wished I'd stayed home. He nods faintly. This is why I didn't. Because sometimes the fire comes to your home whether you lift a sword or not. And if you don't stand, it takes everything. The boy swallows, his jaw tight. He doesn't argue. He doesn't look away. To give him something else to hold on to, you add a story, an old one but true. In the north, there's a chronicle of a village spared in war because a single shepherd lit the hills with lanterns. The invaders thought an army waited for them and turned back. One man with fire saved 100 lives. You glance at him. Not all flames destroy. Some warn. Some protect. You remember that. Edric breathes out, shaky but steadier than before. So, what do we do now? You rise, scanning the horizon. The ash clings to your boots, to your soul. The eastward road stretches on, indifferent. We keep moving, you say, and we carry the memory of this place with us. Not as weight, but as fuel. The crows scatter overhead as you both step beyond the ruins, their cries chasing you like black banners against the pale sky. The road dips into shadow as the ash-stained fields give way to forest. Branches close above, skeletal fingers latticing against a dim afternoon light. The smell of smoke lingers still, though here it mingles with damp earth and the musk of fallen leaves. Edric keeps close, one hand on the hilt of the borrowed dagger he hasn't yet learned to wear with ease. Your steps slow. The silence here is different, less empty, more watching. Birds should chatter, squirrels should scurry, but instead you hear only the groan of trees shifting in the breeze. You remember this kind of hush from old campaigns. It's the sound of eyes hidden in the undergrowth. Then the figures emerge. 4 of them, slipping from the shadows like stains. Cloaks ragged, boots caked with mud, faces half covered in scarves. Travelers, perhaps, but their spacing gives them away, too deliberate, flanking you without closing in. Bandits rarely waste time with such choreography. The tallest speaks first, his voice thin and oily. Strange to see knights on foot in these woods. His gaze drops to your sword, and with a blade that shines so bright, must have cost a fortune. Edric stiffens. You rest a calming hand on his arm before answering. This road doesn't belong to you. Step aside. They chuckle, a low, humorless sound. One of the shorter men, a scar curling across his cheek, shifts his grip on a crude axe. We don't want trouble, just a toll. Of course they do. A toll, in a forest with no gates, no walls, no lord to enforce it. That word has always been a thief's polite way of saying robbery. But there's something more here. Their eyes don't linger on your coin pouch or Edric's boots. They stay fixed on the sword, the reforged steel that gleams even in dim light. The leader tilts his head. That's not a peasant's weapon. Whose crest did you scrape off, knight? Your fingers twitch against the hilt. There's no crest now, only the memory of one. And perhaps it's better that way. Doesn't matter, you say. Ah. The man grins, yellow teeth flashing. So it was stolen. Edric blurts before he can stop himself. He didn't steal it. The leader laughs, shaking his head. Boy, I wasn't talking to you. His eyes narrow again, weighing you. Not with fear, but calculation. There's a tension now, thick as the fog curling low to the ground. Edric shifts nervously, his breath quickening. You remember that feeling, the pulse in your temples, the weight in your stomach before steel meets steel. For him, this is the first step toward that line. You could fight, of course, for against two, but their stances are lazy, untrained. Steel would sing and you'd win, though not without blood spilled. And maybe not without Edric seeing more death than he's ready to swallow. So you try another path. You say, your tone light, almost casual. There's a reason old knights carry swords like this. They're heavy, unwieldy, not worth much to sell. Unless you enjoy hauling iron through forests, this blade's curse outweighs its value. One of the men snorts. Curse? You smile faintly. The last thief who tried to claim it woke up 2 mornings later screaming, swearing he saw every man he'd killed sitting at the end of his bed. They say the sword binds blood to steel, and it remembers, whether you do or not. Edric glances at you sharply, half believing, half playing along. You wink just enough for him to catch it. The leader chuckles, but the sound is less certain now. Superstition seeps into the cracks of hardened men more easily than iron ever does. You see the shift, the quick glance between them, the way one fingers a charm at his neck. Bah! The scarred one mutters, though his grip loosens. Old soldiers' tales. Maybe, you reply, still calm. But you've seen what happened to the village behind us. Fire and ash, nothing left. Do you want to risk carrying the blade that saw it? A beat of silence stretches, and you know the weight of it has landed. The leader waves a hand finally, gruff and annoyed. Go on then, not worth the trouble. The others hesitate, then step back into the shadows, melting into the trees with less swagger than they had when they arrived. Edric exhales hard, clutching the dagger tight. I thought we'd have to fight. You give him a sidelong look. Sometimes words cut sharper than steel. He studies you, brow furrowed. Was any of that true? About curses. You smirk, eyes forward. What do you think? He doesn't answer, but the corner of his mouth twitches, as if he wants to believe it. Wants to believe the blade carries something beyond flesh and iron. The forest swallows the last of the men's footsteps. Ahead, the path narrows, bending deeper into shadow, toward whatever trial waits next. The forest thins at last, and stone rises where bark once stood. At first it seems like a bluff, gray and sheer against the darkening sky. But as you draw closer, shapes resolve. Walls, arches, towers half buried in ivy. A monastery, weathered and sagging, its bones older than the kingdom itself. Edric stares up, wide-eyed. It's abandoned? Not entirely, you murmur. The faint sound of bells carries on the wind, not the bright peal of celebration, but the low, dragging toll that marks dusk prayers. A voice calling God into empty rooms. The gates stand crooked, one hinge long rotted, the other clinging stubbornly to rust. You push it open and the screech of iron echoes through the courtyard. Inside, the air is cooler, tinged with incense long faded but not forgotten. Stones beneath your boots are smoothed by centuries of pilgrims, though moss now claims most of the cracks. A figure emerges from the cloisters. A monk, robe patched a dozen times over, eyes sharp despite the stoop of his back. He carries a lantern, its glow trembling in the dark like a small, nervous heart. "You walk late, travelers," he says, voice thin but steady. His gaze slides from you to Edric, then lingers uneasily on the sword at your side. Not hostile, just wary, as though recognizing both the weight and the danger of a night without a crest. "We seek shelter," you reply simply. The monk hesitates, thumb brushing the beads at his waist. "Our walls are not strong, our stores not full, but Christ commands charity." His lantern dips, beckoning you inward. "You may rest in the refectory, no farther." You follow, the echo of your steps carrying through stone corridors. Murals flake along the walls, saints with hollow eyes, devils with teeth dulled by time. Edric trails a hand along the cool stone, his awe poorly hidden. To him, this place must seem like a relic of a world he barely understands. In the refectory, rough benches line a long table. A loaf of coarse bread waits there, and a bowl of beans cooled long past their meal. The monk gestures, his eyes avoiding yours. "Eat, sleep. At dawn you must go." He leaves without waiting for thanks. The lantern light shrinks, then vanishes into the cloister, leaving you and Edric with shadows and silence. The boy breaks bread, chewing slowly. "Do you think he knows what happened in the village?" "Monks always know more than they say," you answer, lowering yourself onto the bench with a groan. Edric studies you, his brow furrowed. "Do you think he's afraid of us?" You meet his gaze. "No. He's afraid of what follows men like us." The words hang in the air, heavy as the stones around you. Outside, the bells toll once more. Their sounds stretch thin against the night. You lie down on the hard bench, cloak pulled over your shoulder. The sword rests by your side, its steel glinting faintly even in shadow, as if it refuses to sleep. Edric curls nearby, his breathing slow, uncertain. But you do not sleep easily. In the stillness of the monastery, your mind drifts, back to battles that never leave, to banners burned and brothers lost, to the endless toll of violence that still finds you no matter where you run. And somewhere, in the silence between the bells, you think you hear it. A whisper of steel sliding from its sheath, though your hand never moved. The night in the monastery breathes differently from the forest. It is not the restless murmur of leaves and hidden animals, but a hollow, echoing silence that seems to wait for something. You lie on the bench, eyes open, cloak wrapped around you, and though Edric sleeps curled beside a wall with his cheek pressed against the wood, your body resists surrender. The stone walls, thick as they are, cannot keep out the shadows in your head. The bells toll again at midnight, a sound heavy enough to crawl into your ribs. Somewhere deeper in the cloister, voices chant. A few monks, no more than a handful, their tones low and wavering like a fire close to burning out. It is not a joyous sound. It is not even a peaceful one. The chant feels like men holding a rope tied to a cliff edge, knuckles white, praying the line doesn't snap. You close your eyes, but the darkness does not soften. Instead, it sharpens. The sword at your side seems heavier, its steel humming like it remembers battles you'd rather forget. And then you see it. Not in front of you, not behind your eyelids, but somewhere deeper. A vision. The monastery melts away, and you stand in a ruined field. Smoke lingers where grass should be. The sky glows a sickly red, as if the sun bled itself across the clouds. In the center of it all, a lone knight kneels, his armor blackened, his crest burned away. He holds his sword not like a weapon, but like a penitent holding a cross. And when he lifts his head, you see your own face. "Is this your homecoming?" The vision you whispers. His voice carries like a crack in glass, fragile but sharp. A knight who flees cannot outrun what waits. You wake with a start, hand clutching the hilt of your actual blade. Your breath rasps against the still air, sweat cooling on your neck despite the chill stone floor. Edric stirs, mumbling something about his mother, then drifts again. He knows nothing of visions, of omens that slip into your mind like thieves. You envy him that ignorance. From the shadows, the old monk appears once more. You don't hear his steps, only notice the lantern light blooming weakly at the edge of the hall. He studies you without surprise, as if he expected you to wake like this. You dreamed, he says, though you never told him. Your mouth tightens. Was it a dream? The monk lowers the lantern. Men who carry steel into sacred places often hear voices louder than God's. His tone is neither cruel nor kind, simply factual, like reciting the weather. You should leave at dawn. The air around you is already restless. You want to ask him what he knows, what he sees when his eyes land on you. But he's already retreating, the lantern fading like a dying star. You sit awake until the pale edge of dawn creeps over the horizon. Sleep never returns, only the steady pulse of your heartbeat and the cold weight of steel. When Edric stirs, blinking against the weak light, he rubs his eyes and says, "You didn't sleep at all, did you?" "No," you admit. You rise, joint stiff, and sling the sword back across your hip. We move on. Outside, the bells toll again, but this time they sound less like prayer and more like warning. The morning air outside the monastery is wet with dew, heavy enough that every breath feels like you're swallowing river water. Birds stir in the trees. Sparrows, crows, something shrill and darting that you can't name, but their chatter doesn't warm the silence that lingers after last night's vision. Edric yawns, stretching his arms so wide his elbows pop. Monks' benches are not made for sleeping, he mutters, half laughing. I'll take a damp haystack any day. You envy him again. How quickly he can turn discomfort into a joke. How lightly he seems to walk through all this. The old monk is waiting at the gate. His robes hang like faded banners, stitched and restitched so often they look more patchwork than cloth. In his hand, a wooden staff polished smooth by years of grip. He doesn't greet you, doesn't smile. His gaze is steady, as if searching for something he's not sure exists in you. Your path is not straight, he says simply. It bends, and it darkens. Edric frowns. That's not very reassuring. The monk's eyes flick to him, then back to you. But it is true. He steps closer, lowers his voice as if the trees themselves might be eavesdropping. There are men ahead who call themselves pilgrims, but their hearts are not holy. Bandits wear rags as easily as knights wear crests. Keep your hand close to steel, but closer to mercy. You almost ask him about the vision, about the kneeling knight, about the words that still echo in your chest. But you stop. Something in his eyes tells you he already knows, and that speaking it aloud would not grant you answers, only tighten the weight of them. Instead, you nod. We'll heed your warning. The monk presses something into your hand. A small token, carved wood, shaped like a wheel with 8 spokes. It's worn, smooth, almost weightless. For the road, he says. Not protection, reminder. Everything turns. Edric squints at it. Is that supposed to mean fate? Or just bad carpentry? The monk doesn't answer. He simply turns and walks back through the gate, staff tapping against stone, until the shadows of the cloister swallow him whole. You tuck the token into your pouch, its edges pressing faintly against your thigh with every step as you and Edric move on. The road east winds away from the monastery in a thin, pale line. Grass creeps over the cobblestones where neglect has taken hold. Some stretches are still firm, proud relics of Rome's long-gone legions, while others crumble under weeds and mud. Every stone you step on feels like a reminder that history lies beneath your feet. Layers of it pressed down by time, like an old manuscript written over and over again. The morning warms into midday, and with it the haze of fatigue clings to your mind. You walk and you keep walking, the world shifting from stone to dirt, from open field to the first hints of forest again. Edric hums a tune, something about a miller's daughter, badly off-key, and at one point he stops to kick a rock as though he were playing a child's game. But the monk's words gnaw at you. Pilgrims ahead who are not what they seem. The bending, darkening path. The vision of your own face kneeling in a ruin. All of it coils in your chest until even the sunlight feels like it glances off you instead of warming you. By late afternoon, the road widens near a shallow river crossing. A cluster of figures appears on the opposite bank. Half a dozen men and women dressed in the rough wool of travelers. A wooden cross lashed to a staff rising above them. Pilgrims, or the mask of them. One waves when he sees you. His smile is wide, almost too wide. "Brothers," he calls across the water. "Come, join us. Safety is greater in numbers." Edric glances at you. His expression says what you're already thinking. Here it is, the first bend. You tighten your grip on your cloak, the token's shape pressing against you like an unspoken question. The monk's voice echoes in your head. Closer to steel, but closer to mercy. The water murmurs at your feet. The strangers wait on the far bank, their faces bright, their hands hidden. You step forward. The river is shallow enough that your boots sink with a soft squelch in the silt, water rising halfway up your calves. The pilgrims wait on the far bank, their hands lifted in cheerful greeting, but their smiles are just a little too perfect, like painted masks. Edric mutters, "You ever notice how some smiles feel like knives?" "Yeah." "This is one of those." The man holding the cross staff steps forward as you climb onto the opposite bank. His robe is stained with travel, patched at the elbows, and yet you notice the glint beneath, metal, just for a heartbeat, before the cloth shifts. Pilgrims don't usually wear chainmail under wool. "Brothers," he says warmly, "the road east is long. Where do you travel?" Your hand hovers near your sword hilt. "Home," you answer, and the word feels strange on your tongue, as though the moment you say it, it slips further away. The man chuckles, the sound empty as an overturned chalice. "A noble destination. Perhaps we might share bread, wine, the comfort of stories." Behind him, one of the women adjusts her cloak, and in that movement, you glimpse a dagger tucked into her belt. Another man shifts his pack, and the clink that follows is unmistakably steel. They're armed like soldiers, dressed like the pious, and watching you with eyes too sharp for prayer. Edric leans close. "Mercy or suspicion? If I were writing this story, I'd pick suspicion. It sells better." You almost laugh despite the tension. But then the leader speaks again. "Tell me," he says, "have you heard the tale of Saint Alban? He gave his life for a stranger, took a blade meant for another. They say even as his head was struck, his lips whispered a prayer. His eyes fix on yours. Would you do the same, I wonder?" The air thickens. You realize he's not just testing you for food or coin. He's weighing your soul like a butcher weighing meat. You glance down at your pouch. The wooden token presses against your thigh, its 8 spokes spinning in your mind. Everything turns. For a moment, silence reigns, broken only by the gurgle of the river and Edric's restless shuffling. And then the leader grins wider, too wide. He lowers his cross staff, and beneath the cloth wrapping you see not wood, but iron. A spearhead. The pilgrims close in. Edric sighs. Knew it. Fake monks, fake smiles, probably fake relics, too. He draws his sword with a rasp of steel. Guess we do this the old-fashioned way. You don't move yet. The monk's words echo again. Closer to steel, but closer to mercy. Mercy, in this case, might mean letting them strike first, offering a chance to reveal themselves as more than thieves. But suspicion hums in your veins, and every instinct screams that waiting could cost you blood. The leader's eyes lock with yours. "So, knight," he says softly, "will you kneel like Alban, or will you fight?" The choice feels enormous, like a hinge upon which the whole journey could turn. You tighten your grip, and the world tilts into motion. Steel scrapes from scabbards. Cloaks fall aside to reveal swords, axes, daggers. The smell of river mud mixes with the sharp tang of metal. You step forward into the circle they make around you. Somewhere, far away in the folds of time, historians are still arguing about encounters like this. Were knights always merciful or always brutal? Did they seek peace or blood first? The truth, as always, lies muddied in the riverbank. Here, though, it's your truth that's about to be written. You draw your blade, and the first pilgrim lunges. Steel crashes against steel before you even have time to breathe. The false pilgrim's blade arcs toward your shoulder, a gleam of silver catching the last smear of daylight, but your arm is faster. You meet it with a clang that rattles bone. Sparks fly, as though the night itself is striking flint. Edric's laugh cuts through the chaos. "See? Told you. Nothing like a bandit brawl to keep the blood pumping." Another rushes at you from the left, dagger flashing. You pivot, boots digging into wet earth, and your sword hisses in a wide sweep. The man stumbles back, cloak torn, his prayer beads scattering across the ground like spilled dice. Not beads at all, metal shot, strung to look holy. For a second, you almost admire the ingenuity. Then someone else nearly skewers you. The circle tightens. 5, 6, maybe more, robes flaring, weapons glinting, faces grim. These aren't just desperate highwaymen. They move with discipline, their stances trained. Soldiers once, perhaps, or mercenaries who decided robes were cheaper than honor. The leader, the one with the false cross-staff spear, doesn't fight yet. He watches, calm, like a priest overseeing confession. His lips twitch upward, as though each clash of steel is just another verse in a hymn only he understands. Your blade catches another sword, shoving it aside. Then your elbow finds its mark against a jaw. You hear the crack, feel the man collapse, and in that brief lull you notice something odd. None of them curse. None cry out. They fight in silence, as though bound by some vow. "Creepy," Edric mutters, ducking a strike and answering with one of his own. At least real bandits swear when you break their teeth. The river churns behind you, and for a moment you think of Saint Alban again, the tale the leader had recited. A man who gave himself for another, who whispered prayer as steel ended him. Closer to mercy, closer to steel. The words echo like a riddle, like the turning of that wooden token in your pouch. You could end this now if you pressed harder. Drive through, spill blood, leave their bodies for crows. It would be swift, decisive, suspicion made real. Or you could try to disarm, strike without killing, force them to scatter. Mercy in the mud. Risky, yes, but maybe that's what this trial is about. The leader finally steps forward, staff lowered, spearhead gleaming. His eyes lock on you with unnerving calm. "Enough dancing," he says, his voice carrying strangely clear over the clash. "Show me if the last knight's heart is iron or flesh." And suddenly, everything slows. The bandits halt, forming a loose ring again. Their silence is heavier than the fight itself. You realize they're waiting, not to kill you outright, but to see what choice you'll make. Edric huffs beside you, wiping sweat from his brow. "So it's a test, then? Great. Because when I signed up for this trip, I was thinking more scenic views, maybe some cheese, not existential morality play in the mud. A bead of blood slides down your cheek from a shallow cut, warm against the cool night air. Your grip tightens on your sword. Mercy or steel? The pilgrims turned bandits turned judges lean in, eyes hungry for the answer. And you step forward to give it. You lunge forward, and for the briefest instant you aren't even sure which path you've chosen. Your blade gleams, your arm is steady, but the intent behind the strike feels suspended, caught between the weight of mercy and the pull of steel. The leader meets you with his spear staff, the two weapons colliding in a sharp clang that rings out like a bell tolling midnight. The circle of bandits doesn't break. They lean inward, silent still, as if this duel alone will decide everything. You shove against the spear, twist your wrist, and instead of slicing, you flick the weapon sideways. The motion is controlled, restrained, just enough to jar the staff from his hands without spilling blood. His eyes widen slightly, though his expression remains calm. Mercy. But then, your follow-through sends the flat of your blade slamming into his chest, hard enough to knock him flat in the mud. Steel. A compromise or perhaps a contradiction. The others freeze. Some exchange glances. Then, as though a silent signal has passed through them, they step back. One by one, they sheath their weapons. The leader rises slowly, wiping grime from his robe, and gives a single nod. Not of defeat, but of acknowledgement. You walk the line, he says softly. Closer to steel, closer to mercy. Perhaps closer than even you know. Before you can demand answers, the bandits melt into the darkness. No footsteps, no whispers, just gone. Even their false beads and scattered blades seem to vanish with them, as though they were shadows performing a scene, now dismissed. Edric exhales like he's been holding his breath for a year. Well, he mutters, I'll just add mysterious cultish highwaymen vanish into thin air to the list of things I wasn't ready for today. Right under no cheese. You stand still, chest heaving, sword lowered, the echo of the leader's words still clinging to your ears. Was it truly a fight or a trial disguised as one? Were you judged for your sword arm or for your restraint? The night presses close again, the only sound the river rushing at your back. Your muscles ache, but there's no blood on your hands. At least not tonight. A strange calm follows, almost dreamlike, as if the confrontation was never entirely real. And yet, the cut on your cheek still stings, warm proof of what passed. Come on, Edric says quietly. If they want to play ghosts, let them. We've got a road to follow. You nod, but part of you wonders. Did you just pass some hidden test? Or did you simply survive a riddle no one explained? As you walk, the wind picks up, carrying with it the faintest trace of incense. Sweet, smoky, out of place in the cold night. You glance back once, but the road is empty. And so you move forward, the line between mercy and steel still lingering in your grip. The road feels lonelier after their disappearance. You step carefully, as if the ground itself might fold away and reveal another phantom trial waiting beneath your boots. The torchlight flickers, and every shifting shadow looks like it could belong to one of the vanished bandits. Edric keeps muttering under his breath, not loud enough to understand, but steady enough to remind you he's still there. You can't help replaying the moment. The clash, the choice, the strange surrender. There's no blood, but there is weight. The words, "You walk the line," they cling like burrs to your cloak. If mercy was a shield and steel was a blade, you just used both in a single breath. The balance left you standing, but balance rarely lasts. The night doesn't grant you much time to reflect. The wind grows harsher, and through it comes a low drone. a vibration deep enough you feel it in your chest before you hear it in your ears. At first, you think it's thunder, but the sound doesn't roll or fade. It hums. Edric freezes, tilting his head. That's not weather. His voice is almost reverent, as if he stumbled into a church at midnight. That's bells. And yes, you hear them too, distant, steady, not from a belfry but from something heavier, more deliberate. The toll isn't metal, not exactly. It's as if the stones themselves are ringing. You follow the sound, and the road leads to the edge of a valley. Below, in the moonlight, rises a structure that steals your breath. A fortress, no, more like a cathedral, but broken, half swallowed by earth and vines. Its towers are jagged, leaning like teeth, and along its walls hang enormous bells carved of stone. They sway with the wind, not swinging but humming, as though tuned to the bones of the earth itself. No torches burn inside, yet a faint glow pulses within the cracked windows, gold-green and unsteady, like candlelight underwater. Edric stares with wide eyes. Nobody builds stone bells, not unless they're trying to sing with the earth. You can't shake the feeling that this place wasn't on any map, that even in daylight, the valley would hide it, folding back into hills as soon as you looked away. When you reach the ruined gates, the humming grows stronger, and a chill lifts the hairs on your arms. You push through a rusted iron frame, and inside the courtyard you find carvings. Not of saints, not of knights, but of strangers. Faces with blank eyes, half human, half bird, as if sculptors couldn't decide where flesh ended and feathers began. The bells groan again, low and patient, and you feel the vibration run up your spine. Edric whispers, maybe those bandits didn't disappear. Maybe they just went inside. You're not sure whether that thought comforts you or confirms your worst fear. The air inside the fortress feels denser, like walking through water. Every step carries a strange resistance, and the torchlight bends, pulling shadows in directions that make no sense. The bells above never stop their groaning hum, and the sound presses against your chest as if you've swallowed a heartbeat that isn't yours. Edric clutches the hilt of his sword, but his knuckles are pale. This place, it wasn't abandoned. It was forgotten. His voice cracks slightly, betraying the tremor he's trying to hide. You walk beneath an archway carved with spirals, their grooves polished smooth as if countless hands had touched them. The floor is broken tiles, many missing, others arranged in patterns that seem to shift if you look too long. For a moment, the torchlight glances off one in particular, an inlay of pale stone, scratched but still distinct. It shows a knight kneeling before something vast, too vast to fit in the frame of the tile. Only talons and feathers are visible. The deeper you go, the more the fortress resembles a cathedral turned inside out. The nave stretches impossibly long, ribbed with cracked columns. Instead of stained glass, the windows hold fragments of obsidian. They reflect no flame, only the faint green glow that breathes from somewhere beneath the floor. Listen, Edric murmurs. You strain, and beneath the hum of the bells you hear it. A whisper, not of words, but of many voices exhaling at once, like a crowd caught between prayer and sigh. Then you see them. At first, they seem like statues in niches, hooded figures of stone, hunched forward in devotion. But as the bells shudder again, one shifts only slightly, the slow incline of a head, a faint scraping of rock against rock. They aren't statues. Your throat tightens, but you move forward. You can't stop now. The fortress won't let you. Every corridor feels like a throat swallowing you whole. Finally, you reach the central hall. Its dome has cracked open, moonlight spilling through. At its heart stands a great altar, overgrown with moss. Upon it rests a relic, a sword, weathered yet strangely bright, its blade etched with runes that glow faintly in time with the hum of the bells. Edric exhales like he's been holding his breath for hours. That's no ordinary steel. It's older than any king's crown. As you approach, the hooded figures stir in unison. Dust shakes from their cloaks. A chorus of gravelly voices rises. A single phrase spoken as one. Return the balance. Your hand hovers over the relic. You don't know if taking it will save you or end you. And through it all, you feel the fortress listening. Your hand trembles as it hovers above the sword, and for a heartbeat you swear the steel itself leans closer, eager for you. The runes pulse once, twice, then fall into rhythm with your own breathing, as if the relic is alive, waiting. You close your fingers around the hilt. The moment you touch it, the fortress exhales. The whispering voices collapse into silence. The hum of the bells falters, and the hooded figures bow their heads all at once, like reeds bent by a sudden wind. Cold fire burns across your palm, not pain exactly, but memory. You see flashes not your own, battles beneath a different sun, kings whose faces are blurred, a winged shadow blotting out fields. Edric stares, half in awe, half in terror. You shouldn't hold that, he mutters, but he doesn't step forward. Maybe he can't. Maybe the fortress won't let him. The sword feels heavier than any blade you've carried, though its edge gleams sharper than moonlight on water. The green glow from the cracked tiles fades into the steel itself, as if the fortress has poured its last breath into your hands. Then the dome groans. Stone dust rains down. The hooded figures crumble, not into corpses but back into rubble, as if they were never alive to begin with. The bells above give one final clang, louder, deeper, enough to make your bones rattle before snapping into silence. You run, not with elegance, not with knightly composure, but with the desperate scramble of someone who knows the walls themselves are collapsing. Edric is at your side, cursing between gasps, his armor clanging against stone. Behind you, the hall splits open, the altar swallowed by a fissure that glows faintly like embers. By the time you stumble out into the night air, the fortress is gone. Not collapsed, gone. Only a scar in the earth remains, and a thin coil of smoke rising into the stars. You drop to your knees, clutching the sword against your chest. It hums faintly still, not like the bells, but like the low thrum of a heartbeat in the quiet. Edric sits beside you, dragging off his helmet. His hair is plastered with sweat, his eyes wide. Well, he pants. If this is what you call a shortcut home, I'm starting to regret tagging along. You almost laugh, though the sound dies quickly, because even in the relief of open air, you feel it, the way the sword binds to you, like a chain of light no eye can see. It's not yours to lay down anymore. Somewhere far away, wolves howl, and the night air tastes like iron. The sword doesn't speak in words, not yet, but its silence is louder than most people's shouting. You carry it like a newborn balanced awkwardly in your arms, too terrified to let it slip, too afraid of what it might do if you set it down. The weight is wrong, feels like a mountain in your grip, but your arm doesn't tire, almost as if the blade is carrying you. Edric keeps glancing at it out of the corner of his eye, and then at you, like a man who suspects his travel companion has quietly sprouted horns. You're humming, he mutters after an hour's march. You frown. He's right. You hadn't noticed. The sound is low, rhythmic, coming not from your lips but from the blade itself. Almost like a lullaby. Almost. The road stretches ahead, moonlight pooling in puddles from yesterday's storm. You step through the muck, and everywhere your boot lands, faint silver ripples fan outward, as though the world itself recognizes what you now carry. Insects fall quiet as you pass. Even the wind seems to wait, It would almost be peaceful if it didn't feel like you've become the drum everyone else is marching to. You pause at a crumbling roadside shrine, its wooden cross bent at an odd angle, half swallowed by ivy. Edric crouches, brushes away dirt. "This is old," he says, "older than our fathers' fathers. Some still leave offerings." He points to a small clay bowl, filled with coins green with rust. You're about to say it's superstition when the sword flares faintly, and every coin rattles against the bowl's rim. You both stare. "Well," Edric says with a shaky laugh, "at least it has good manners. Imagine if it demanded snacks instead." You press on, and the forest rises around you like dark waves. The deeper you go, the stronger the pull. Not toward the shrine, not toward Edric, not even toward the stars. It's pulling you toward home, your real home, the place you've been chasing this entire cursed road. The sword knows. That's the unnerving part. Somewhere between the second and third watch, you hear hooves. Not behind you, above you. You tilt your head back, and against the pale face of the moon you see them. Riders with no flesh, only bones wrapped in tatters of banners. Their horses' manes like black smoke. They don't chase. They pace, circling as though judging whether you're quarry or kin. Edric grips your arm. "Don't look at them. Don't invite them." His voice is tight, like he's speaking from memory. But you can't look away, because the moment the lead rider lowers his skull helm toward you, the sword thrums harder, like recognition, like greeting an old friend. And that's when you understand you're not just walking home. You're dragging something back with you, something the world thought it buried centuries ago. The riders vanish with the dawn, but the taste of ash lingers on your tongue, and your shadow looks a little too long in the morning light. The first whisper comes when you least expect it. Not in battle, not at some dramatic thunderclap moment, but while you're chewing on a piece of stale bread that feels like it's been baked during the last crusade. Edric is dozing by the fire, his head tilted at an angle that guarantees a stiff neck in the morning. The forest is quiet, save for the occasional owl trying to sound ominous. That's when you hear it soft, close, unmistakably in your head. You freeze. The bread sits half forgotten in your mouth. At first, you think it's Edric snoring with a weird new talent. But no, this is clearer, deliberate. You glance at the sword resting across your knees, its blade reflecting the firelight in uneasy waves. The whisper is so gentle you could almost mistake it for your own thought. Almost. "You've carried me long enough. Let me carry you." You almost laugh. It's absurd, like the sword just offered to piggyback you through the woods. But your chest tightens because some part of you wants to say yes. Imagine never feeling tired again, never doubting which road to take. Imagine a constant companion that doesn't nag you about how loud you chew. Unlike Edric, the fire pops, pulling you back. You look at Edric, still asleep, mouth open, the picture of human vulnerability, and wonder if he hears it too, or if this is just you. The sword seems to sense the thought because the voice comes again, firmer now. "Only you, knight. Always you." And there it is, the line that slides cold right into your spine. You don't answer. You don't have to, because the moment stretches, and you realize answering would make it real. Morning comes, and Edric notices the dark circles under your eyes. "Bad dreams?" he asks, rubbing his beard. You grunt something non-committal. He doesn't press, though he gives the blade one long look, as though he's guessing more than you'd like him to. You march on, fields opening like faded gold carpets, villages shrinking into dots behind you. Peasants bow their heads as you pass, not to you but to the shimmer at your hip. They can't explain why, but they know. Humans always know when something bigger than them is in the room. Later that day, a storm rolls in, the kind that makes the horizon disappear into sheets of water. You and Edric take shelter beneath an ancient oak, its branches thick and twisted. Lightning forks across the sky, and for a split second, you see figures dancing in the rain. Shadows in armor, laughing without sound, circling around you. When you blink, they're gone. The sword hums louder, almost smug. Edric leans close, whispering so low you barely catch it. That thing's choosing you, and you don't even know if it's a crown or a coffin. The sword doesn't deny it. Instead, it whispers again, soothing, honey slick. Home is near. Trust me. And against your better judgment, you find yourself walking faster, as if it's not the road but the blade itself pulling your feet. The road tightens into a narrow pass, a stone throat with cliffs rising like jagged teeth on either side. Rain still drips from the storm that passed, the ground slick and sucking at your boots. Edric mutters something about bad places for bad company, which is exactly the kind of thing people say right before bad company shows up. And sure enough, you hear it. The metallic rattle of weapons, the low voices of men who've long ago stopped caring whether they scare others. Bandits, not the kind that steal bread and goats. These wear mismatched armor scavenged from dead soldiers, their eyes already measuring how much you're worth. Spoiler, with that sword, you're priceless. The leader steps forward, a scarred fellow with a face like it's been dragged across cobblestones. "Leave the blade," he says, like it's as simple as asking for a loaf of bread. You walk away, we walk away. Edric shifts, hand on his axe, but you don't move, because the sword hums. Not like before, not that faint, tickling murmur. This is alive, pulsing through your palm even before you've touched it. You hear it again, the voice sharper now, almost impatient. "Let me show you, just once. You'll never doubt again." It's terrifying how tempting that sounds. You draw the blade and the air changes. The bandits notice. Their confidence falters, not because you're some towering figure of dread, but because the steel itself glows faintly, catching the last scraps of stormlight like it's drinking them. The leader barks something, trying to rally his men. That's when you move. Or rather, the sword moves you. Your arm feels lighter, faster, as if the weapon already knows where to strike. The first bandit lunges, and before your mind even registers the attack, your blade arcs, perfect and effortless. He falls, and you swear you didn't even mean to swing that hard. Two more rush. The sword twists in your grip like it's guiding your wrist. One slash, two bodies drop. The sound they make hitting the mud is sickening, but distant, like you're hearing it from underwater. You blink, and for half a second, you see not bandits but armored knights bowing as they fall, their faces blurred by shadow. Edric shouts your name. You barely hear him over the sword's voice, ecstatic now. "See? With me you cannot lose. With me you are endless." By the time the last man flees into the trees, you're standing alone in the rain-slick mud, chest heaving, sword gleaming clean as if it's never touched blood. Edric stares at you, axe hanging forgotten at his side. His eyes are wide, not with admiration, but with fear. "Tell me," he says hoarsely, "was that you swinging? Or it?" You don't answer, because you don't know. That night, by the campfire, you don't taste the food. The whispers don't stop, circling your skull like smoke. Home is near, power is near, and you are mine. And the terrifying thing is, you're not sure you hate the sound of it. You reach higher ground by dawn, and there it is, the city, or what's left of it. From a distance, it looks like a crown missing half its jewels. Broken towers leaning against each other, smoke rising lazily from chimneys tucked between ruin and rebuilding. Your home, not the one you left, not really, but the place your mind has wandered back to in every restless night. Edric whistles low, a sound caught between admiration and dread. "Looks smaller," he mutters. And he's right. Everything shrinks when you finally arrive. It's like returning to your old school after years away, only to realize the lockers you thought were huge barely reach your shoulder. Except here, the school bullies have crossbows, and the teachers might be plotting coups. The road thickens with travelers, merchants in rattling carts, farmers carrying baskets of onions, soldiers moving information. You feel eyes on you constantly. Some linger on your armor, others on Edric's scarred face, but most get stuck on the sword. Even sheathed, it radiates, the way a bonfire warms your skin even from across the street. And the whispers, they're louder here. They don't even bother being subtle now. They know you've come. They fear you. Step inside and claim it. Edric keeps glancing your way, his jaw tight. He hasn't said a word about last night, but you catch him polishing his axe more than usual, as if reminding himself it's still there. At the gates, a pair of guards block your way. Their armor is polished, their tabards bright with the crest you used to fight for. Funny how symbols age slower than people. One of them narrows his eyes. Name and purpose should be simple, but how do you sum up years of exile, blood, and whispers in a sentence? You open your mouth, but the sword hums again, louder than your own thoughts. Say nothing. Show them who you are. You grip the hilt instinctively. The guard stiffens. For one tense heartbeat, it feels like this whole city is about to ignite because of you. Just you, your hand on a relic that refuses to stay quiet. But Edric steps forward, his voice steady. "Sir Edric, Knight Retainer, this one is with me." The guards hesitate, then step aside. It's not trust, it's fear. And you walk through the gates on a carpet of suspicion. Inside, it's chaos disguised as routine. Market stalls shout over each other. Bells ring from churches still under repair. Children dart between puddles. Yet behind every laugh, every deal struck, there's tension. The kind that lingers after too many sieges, too many betrayals. Edric leans close. The council will know by nightfall. Word spreads faster than plague here. And you know he's right. Somewhere in those halls of power, someone is already whispering your name. And not with relief. Still, as the sword thrums at your side, you can't help the thought that maybe, just maybe, it's not the city that should be afraid. Maybe it's you. The summons comes quicker than you expect. By dusk, a page boy finds you in the crowded inn, his tunic too clean to belong to any real laborer, his voice shaking as he recites the words, "The council requests your presence." Requests. That word carries the weight of command wrapped in politeness, the way a cat bats at a mouse before swallowing it whole. You walk the streets toward the keep, and it feels like every eye follows. Market chatter lowers. Mugs freeze halfway to mouths. Children tug at their mother's skirts and whisper your name as though you're some ghost stepped out of a storybook. Edric strides at your side, jaw set like stone. If you were a painting, he'd be the shadow that completes the figure. The keep rises above the city like a skeletal giant, walls patched in places where siege engines once bit chunks out of them. Inside, torches smoke against vaulted ceilings. Banners hang limp, their fabric tired but stubborn, much like the people who stitched them back after every invasion. You've walked into fortresses before, but never one that used to belong to you. It's like stepping into an old house you no longer own. The furniture rearranged, the air colder, but still haunted by the smell of your own memories. The council chamber waits at the top of a spiral stair. The doors creak open, and the room hushes. 7 figures sit behind a carved table. Some familiar, older now, more wrinkled, eyes dulled but no less sharp. Some new, strangers who wear authority like fresh paint. They study you as though you're not a knight but a curiosity placed on trial. The eldest speaks first, voice roughened like gravel under boots. You've returned. Against exile, against order. Why? The sword hums. The whispers swell. Tell them. Tell them you've come to rule. Tell them it's yours by right. But Edric's eyes bore into you, pleading silently. If the sword speaks conquest, Edric speaks restraint. You clear your throat. I've come home. That's all. Murmurs ripple like wind through tall grass. Some scoff. Others lean forward, intrigued. One woman in a crimson mantle raises a brow. Home. Interesting word for someone who abandoned it. The jab stings, not because it's false, but because it's the story they've written about you. History, after all, is mostly PR with better costumes. Edric steps forward, voice hard. He bled for this city. When walls fell, he stood. When men ran, he held. And you call that abandonment? The chamber erupts, voices clashing, hands slamming wood. It's less a council and more a marketplace of outrage. But beneath the din, one thing is clear. You've rattled them. Then comes the strangest moment. A younger counselor, no older than 25, leans close enough for you to see his ink-stained fingers. His voice drops, almost too soft to catch. The sword shouldn't be here. You don't know what it wants. And for the first time, you realize fear isn't just in the guards or the streets. It's here, too, coiled under the robes of power. The eldest raises a hand, silencing the chamber. His eyes pierce you. Very well. You may stay for now. But the city is not the one you left. Step carefully, knight, or you'll find enemies in every shadow. You bow more for form than respect. When you leave, the whispers laugh. Loud, vicious, almost triumphant. And you can't shake the feeling that you've walked into their game, not yours. You step out of the council chamber, the doors thudding shut like the lid of a coffin. The torches along the hall flicker, their flames drawn as though by a hidden breath. Edric walks beside you in silence, and even he, ironclad, granite-faced, feels smaller under the weight of what just transpired. The sword pulses faintly at your hip, warm as a heartbeat. They fear me, it whispers, smug as a cat who knows it owns the bed. That fear is power. Take it, wield it, crown yourself in it. You descend the spiral staircase, boots echoing like drums in a hollow chest. Outside, the city waits. People cluster in the twilight streets, craning necks to glimpse you as though you've become less man, more omen. Their faces are a gallery of emotions. Hope, doubt, suspicion, awe. You walk among them, and it's like walking a tightrope strung over centuries of longing and betrayal. At the square, Edric halts. He grips your shoulder, fingers digging in. Listen to me. You can't let it speak for you. If you do, you're gone. We didn't survive just for you to become a weapon in someone else's hand. His voice cracks on the last word. That's when you realize. He's terrified not of the council, not of the city, but of losing you. The sword hums louder, almost in anger. He doesn't understand. You're not theirs to command. You are destiny itself. One step, just one, and the city bends. You close your eyes, and the world narrows to two voices. Edric's, raw and human, and the sword's sharp and endless. But then, over both, you hear something softer. The ordinary murmur of the city, the chatter of a baker closing her stall, the laughter of children chasing each other through alleyways, the steady clop of hooves on cobblestones. Sounds too small for history, too large for silence. Sounds of home. You exhale. Slowly, you draw the blade, its edge catching the last streak of sunset. Gasps ripple through the square. The sword sings, exultant. Yes, finally. But instead of raising it high, instead of pointing it at walls or men or thrones, you kneel. You press the weapon's tip into the earth, the stone resisting, then yielding with a groan. The sword vibrates violently, shrieking in protest, as though it knows it's being bound. The crowd watches, frozen. You push deeper, until the hilt quivers at ground level, until the whispers break, scattered like startled birds. The glow fades. The sword is just steel again, heavy, silent, ordinary. For a heartbeat, the square holds its breath. Then someone claps. Another joins. And suddenly the air erupts in cheers, in cries of relief, in voices that sound like the city rediscovering its own lungs. Edric kneels beside you, shoulders shaking. Not in fear this time, but in something perilously close to joy. You chose right, he says. His voice trembles, but his eyes gleam like a man watching dawn after the longest night. The council may rage, the past may whisper, but the sword no longer commands you. You belong to the city and it belongs to itself. As the night settles in, the cheers dim into murmurs, then into lullabies of a city at rest. You sit in the square until stars bleed across the sky, and the cool air brushes your face like a promise. And maybe, just maybe, this is what home was always meant to feel like. Not conquest, not fear, not glory. Just a place where you can finally set your burdens down. Your eyelids grow heavy. The torches blur. The crowd drifts into shadows. Edric's hand rests steady on your arm, and the world itself seems to lean close, whispering you into sleep. So rest now. You've walked the long road, carried the heavy sword, listened to ghosts and councils alike. You don't need to listen anymore. Just breathe. Just let go. The night will hold you. The city will hum. The stars will keep their watch. And as your last thoughts slip like pebbles into a deep well, the story quiets. Gentle, unhurried, a final hush across the pages.